Hello and welcome to the Talk with Tariro. Indeed, we're bringing you the program in the midst of the corona virus wreaking havoc in our country. And the message that we need to be keeping on giving each other is the need to mask up, to maintain social distance, as well as washing our hands at least for 20 seconds. It's a hello and welcome. On the program today, we are looking at the issue of adolescent sexual reproductive health. And helping me to discuss that issue, I have Trevor Nyakujka. Trevor is a sexual and reproductive health and sexual gender-based violence officer. Trevor, welcome to the talk.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, we want to find out from you what you mean when we're talking about adolescent sexual reproductive health. We know these are development terms that are often used, but when we're looking at somebody who's watching us from home, they would want to know what exactly is it and why is it important for us to talk about it?
In the simplest of forms, I think we like to focus on the progression of life. You're born, you start growing, you start talking, you start walking. I didn't put that in order, but
yes.
And then as you grow up, you become taller, and by the time a person reaches about 10, 11 years old, they start going through the cycle of puberty, which is when they start developing sexual features, whether be it for females, breasts, widened hips, and starting to go to their menstrual cycle. So guys developing a stronger base, having broad shoulders, and starting to develop sexual feelings. So it is in that stage that it is very crucial that something new is coming into one's life. And let's not forget that these are young people, because 10, 11, that's very young. And at this stage, it is very crucial that an adolescent knows what is going on. I used to joke with some of my friends when we were talking about how girls usually had their first period. I learned at Mazoe Boys High. My stream had 163 boys and 8 girls. So I remember when I was in Form 1, there's this one girl who went for a first period, and we as the boys in class, we had no idea what that was, and we started laughing.
So when we are saying why is it important for us to actually talk about it?
It is important for us to talk about it because 1, it's part of the cycle of life. 2, if we do not handle that situation or inform adolescents effectively, we create a cycle of the worst reproductive health outcomes in the world. And unfortunately, Zimbabwe is struggling that much. We have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the world. We've reached a crossroads where now there is a rise in new HIV infections, which is highly prominent between the ages of 10 to 24. So I guess just with this is why it is important for us to talk about it.
Where exactly are we going wrong?
To be honest, it's a complex of issues that that come out, and unfortunately, when everything comes together, it creates room for failure. We're not yet at the point where we can't go back and address this, but I need us to appreciate the fact that one of the issues that I really like talking about is issue of socialization.
Yes.
How do you socialize children about sex? I grew up in a community where we never talked about sex, let alone going to adults and saying that I have a girlfriend when I'm 15. My sister only managed to talk about having a boyfriend when she wanted to get married.
Exactly.
And this is a society that we live in, whether you live in an affluent society or you don't. But let's also appreciate the fact that children eventually, whether you talk to them about it or you don't, they still learn about sex.
So that's where I'm coming from, where I'm saying, are we losing it? Because when you're looking at these sites that you're talking about, because when you're looking at what you're mentioning, it's young girls, young boys going on the internet
Yes.
and accessing.
Yes.
Even it's us leaving our children to be watching TV and watching some shows that have got strictly no under 18.
Very
but
true.
we're living, and that's where they are learning everything. So are we losing it as a society?
To be very honest, we are very close to losing this battle, from my opinion and what I see. And the reason why I talked about socialization first is the fact that it is important for parents, which are the first port of call of socialization for children, to address this information. And this is part of my job as a SRH SGBV officer, to address issues of rights and juxtapose them with responsibility. Because we'll talk about rights, they'll go around and say, we've been given a free pass to have sex.
Yes.
But then we also talk about responsibility that comes back, because we want to prevent unintended pregnancies, prevent STIs, prevent the new infections of HIV that are problematic in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
So we are close to losing it, but I'm optimistic, really.
I like the optimism. When we are looking at even the age that you spoke about, 10 to 24, and when I'm looking at a 10-year-old girl, in Zimbabwe, it's illegal to even have a sexual relationship with such a girl. And yet when we are looking at the sexual debut in our country, it's gone as low as sometimes you see young girls at 9 starting, yeah. So where the law says something, as society, we've got something that we say, young people have something that they are saying. I know parliamentarians were actually going around also with young people saying they're advocating for the lowering of the age of consent. Am I right there?
Yes, but if I should just add on in terms of age of consent, the debate is in threefold. Age of consent to marriage, age of consent to sex, and age of consent to access to sexual reproductive.
To marriage at 11?
No.
What age do they want? Because really, Trevor, I'm going to put you on the spot. You work with young people.
Yes.
And these are the things that I say, this is what we want.
Okay, let me just finish. And then there's age of consent to access to access to sexual reproductive health services.
Yes.
Let me focus a little bit on the access to sexual reproductive health services. As you've clearly alluded, sexual debut of children is going lower and lower on a daily basis. So the argument that we have been having as CSOs is, let's appreciate the fact that sexual debut is going on a little bit earlier. And this is not per se sexual debut where I am going to sleep with a 10-year-old. These are fellow 10-year-olds who are having sex with each other.
Amongst themselves.
And
yes.
since they're having sex amongst themselves, it is important for them to be able to then access the crucial services that they need in order to, number one, it's very contentious, I agree. Number one, not be a statistic, new infection of HIV, not be a statistic for STI, not be a statistic for unintended pregnancies. So by that and that alone,
balance the equation.
Let's balance the equation and give them that access to getting them services. I will go to the most contentious issues.
We'll go on those issues after this short break. Yes, Trevor is unpacking for us the issue of adolescent sexual reproductive health. You know, as parents, when we are watching, sometimes we're like, these people, do they want to damage our children? But if we hear from what he is saying, he's looking at the reality that's happening. Because sometimes we tend to say, let's not do this, but we are jeopardizing as well the lives of our children. So for them working with young people, what he's talking about is making sure that whatever intervention is there is ensuring that our children have a brighter future. They do not become a statistic, like they've said. We'll continue with this discussion after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion, and indeed our focus on the program today is adolescent sexual reproductive health. We've discussed this issue on the program, and developments keep happening, and that's why we continue focusing on what really colleagues in the development sector are implementing to make sure that our children, because we know they are the leaders of tomorrow, they are the future of our country. So it's important that we mold them in the best way possible. So before we went for the break, Trevor, we were speaking about the issue of the age of consent, and you were saying you were now going to allude to the other two factors that were remaining.
Yeah. So the other two factors on issues of age of consent are age of consent to marriage. There's a little bit of disconnect when it comes to the Constitution and the Marriage Act, because the Constitution says age of consent to marriage is 18. Marriage Act, depending
16.
on how you read it, 16. So there are lawyers who can argue in court that it's 16. So for purposes of this conversation, let's just go on 16. But at the end of the day, this is a really contentious issue, because we've got, even in the development sector, we've got other CSOs that are going, no, let's increase it, because we want to protect the rights of this child, because a person who's 16 at the end of the day is still a child. And by getting married, you are inhibiting their opportunities to getting access to further education, employment, and empowering that person as an individual. And we've got other CSOs who are talking about, let's keep it at 16. At 16, and then it creates an environment where a person who's 16 can get since you can get a license, you can get a job, you can get bank. So why can't you get married? And we talked then about the other issue of age of consent to sex. Now, this is the most problematic issue in regards to this conversation altogether. Problematic in the fact that in Zimbabwe, we talk about 16 as the age of consent to sex, where any person who's 16 years and above can agree and say, I can have sex, whether I like it or not. On a religious basis, on a cultural basis, very contentious, because we only believe in sex in the institution of marriage. But as we've already agreed and talked about, and I'm pretty sure our viewers can agree to, this is not happening on a practical scale. So what then should we do to protect children?
But you can have sex with a 16-year-old at 25.
Legally, I'm allowed to do this. Personally, I don't think I can do that, because a 16-year-old is still a child.
It's still a child,
And the conversation that I can have with that is problematic. And I guess my advice to young men, please engage in conversations with people that are at par. Because if we want to control, which is usually the issue that why I'd go for a 16-year-old, the issue of control and power, it really then creates an uneven playing field. And we want to talk about issue of how then are you a man when you can't be at the same level with the person that you say, this is my partner. So I personally, as an individual, would advocate have a relationship with a person that is closer to your age, because it balances out the equation. And at the end of the day, you can only enjoy a relationship as far as the other person in the relationship is enjoying it.
And when we're looking at the issue of consent, in our African setting, maybe looking at the Zimbabwean context, where men often believe that a no is a yes for young girls and for young boys, even for men and women. They're talking about, if she's saying no, it's just a way of saying, no, but I like it. Why is consent so important?
Exactly as you said. I'll go back when the first time I started looking at girls and be like, so she's pretty. I could actually go and ask her out. I remember talking to the guys, and the socialization was, no girl says yes the first time. If she says yes the first time, please run away. Because the running away was based on the fact that it was assumed that any girl who would say yes the first time is a loose girl, and we don't want to be around loose girls.
Really, when I've said no, I'm a loose girl.
Or when you said yes
Or when
the
I've
first
said
time.
yes.
When you said yes the first time,
Exactly.
you're a loose girl. Which is not true. Which is not, because at the end of the day, we've already agreed that girls have feelings. So if she likes you already, why waste time? And in that context, it also goes back to the issue of sex. A girl is supposed to be shy, reserved, and the boy is supposed to teach. That's the role of that's the role of a boy, that's the role of a man. And therefore, if she says yes the first time, she's also loose. So then the male is supposed to take the role of initiating the first kiss and everything else that goes on. And we have a statement that has been rolled around for so long, like, no way some sort of shit. And that's an argument that has been raised, and it's coercion.
Yeah.
And coercion is not good, because at the end of the day, you need to be a point where you are sober sensed to agree to everything that is happening to you, because it's your body.
Yes.
And this happens both sides, even to boys. We have a lot of boys that are coerced into their first sexual encounters because they do not understand what is going on, but they've been told, and it would be embarrassing then to go to my mates and say, I saw the maid at Padimpangu who wants to sleep with me, but and I don't think it's, because having that conversation will thus make me a laughing stock. It's like a poo says, why is he not doing what everyone else is doing?
You know, Trevor, you're raising a very pertinent issue where I was in one discussion forum, and a lot of young boys were actually speaking about how their first encounters is always almost like with helpers at home. And I'm sure if parents are actually watching, we're not going to go deep into that. Parents watching, they would really get worried. We'll continue with our discussion, where today our focus is on adolescent sexual reproductive health. And the points that Trevor is highlighting are how important us understanding adolescent sexual reproductive health, and mainly for us as parents, when young people are talking about the issue of the age of consent, when they're talking about sexual and reproductive health rights. From what we heard from Trevor, it's all encompassing, and often we just conclude they are talking about sex. When they're talking about even reducing the age of consent, they are saying, even when I go to the hospital, when I want to do an HIV test, they are told, bring your parent, and they're saying, please allow us to actually access some of those services. So it's always important that we get to know what are the issues that young people will be presenting when they're talking about these issues, because for us, oftentimes we just stick to one issue and it becomes that issue. So I'm sure how Trevor is unpacking has opened our eyes to this particular issue, how broad it is. Join us after the break as we continue with our discussion. Welcome back. Our discussion continues, and indeed on the program we are discussing adolescent sexual reproductive health. I have Trevor Nyakujga on the program. Trevor, when we are looking at issues of adolescent sexual reproductive health, and even just looking at the issue of young people, earlier on you spoke about rights, but we scratched on the surface. And I would really want to find out the focus on the issue of rights when we are looking ASRH. Why is there that focus? Unpack those rights, because also there's a misconception that young people want to say, it's my right to do this, it's my right to do this, I'm not going to be listening to my parents. Why that focus on the rights? I know you spoke about having rights with responsibility.
Yes. I want to go back to the history of human rights. Human rights are, in the basic of forms, defined as entitlements that you have because you are human. So I'm human, number one. So because I'm human and I'm growing up, I need food, I need shelter, I need air to breathe, I need to be able to go to school. And in this context, I get to 16. I get to 16, 15, and I'm a sexual being by nature. If I'm a female, I need access to menstrual services, whether the economy is good or the economy is bad. I need access to condoms if I need them, because if I don't get them, I will become that statistic that we were talking about earlier. I need access to information to teach me about sex, how to have healthy sex, because at the end of the day, it happens naturally in my mind. But if I'm not informed, it creates a slippery slope and a cycle of disaster, which is the catch 22 situation that we're in right now. The issue of responsibility now comes in fact that, yes, I've got my rights, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to my mom and say, no, I'm supposed to have sex with you, like it or not.
So what have you done as ARC to ensure that adolescents actually get to understand the intersections that exist between SGBV as well as sexual and reproductive health?
I really like the issue that you're talking about of intersections that exist between sexual gender-based violence and SRH. From the conversation that we've had so far, you will see that sexual debut usually for young people is in the form of abuse. And it is very crucial for adolescents to understand where there is abuse and where it is good.
Yeah.
If I'm having sex with a 14-year-old, she will say in her mind that this is good, this is happy, I'm a now empowered girl. But she needs to know that this is abuse.
Yes.
So in that context, we as Adult Rape Clinic have been working extensively to address that situation. Addressing that situation, we are doing it in a couple of ways. One of them, we have volunteers, which we call sexual health advocates, who are actually teenagers and young people who we've trained and capacitated to have a peer-to-peer approach in which they talk to people of their age. Because if I go to a 10-year-old, they'll look at me like, but
Exactly.
no.
You don't know what's happening with us.
You don't know.
Exactly.
And so we've worked to capacitate young people, and so far we're working within Harare, we're working within Chitungwiza, and we've trained about 50. We're going to expand that to about 200, and we're going to expand it to go to Marsh Central, so that we empower young people to empower each other. We've also been working with various stakeholders that are in line with sexual reproductive health, that are in line with sexual gender-based violence, just to name a few, ZNFPC, Busasa, PSZ. We've been working directly with them to create a referral pathway. Because eventually, if a young person wants services, they need to know where to go. And these referral pathways that we've created that if a person comes to Adult Rape Clinic and we offer them services within the context of our limitations, if we can't stop, we then take them to ZNFPC for family planning. We then take them to Musasa for shelter. And this referral pathway has, in a way, improved access to services, because we're not only talking about sexual reproductive services for young people, we're also talking about SGBV, which should be opened in a holistic approach.
And when we're looking at the lockdowns that are there, because we're trying to control COVID-19, what challenges have you faced when we're looking at issues of adolescent sexual reproductive health?
To be very honest, lockdown has been challenging. But going back to the issue of the referral pathways that we've created, and fortunately we are health service providers, so we are essential services. And by the fact of being essential services, we have worked tirelessly to ensure that adolescents have access to services. Right now, what we are focusing on is making sure that adolescents get services that are closest to home.
Okay.
And closest to home, it is very unfortunate that we've had problems with the local clinics. But fortunately, as service providers, we have service providers that are going to communities, opening up pop-up services, and that has been very helpful. And for us, sexual gender-based violence services, we've been working with the police to ensure that those that have been abused, get to our clinic and get all the services that they need, the medical affidavits, the treatment, the PEP, STI treatment, and even treatment to stop unintended pregnancies. And it's been challenging, and it's a little bit it's still unfortunately a little bit touch and go, because the first lockdown is different from this lockdown. So every day we're learning and we are improving on how we can offer our services to the young people.
Okay. And lastly, your call to action for us and our viewers.
Let us appreciate that young people are sexual beings. When we appreciate the fact that young people are sexual beings, we create an environment in which we're able to open up the conversation. When we've opened up the conversation, we then know that abuse is going on. We then know that adolescents can have productive and healthy sexual relations.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Really, the issue that caught my attention in terms of that call to action is the need for us to have open conversations. And this applies at all levels, at family level, within, even as peers, as young people, at even government level. Those open conversations will lead us to ensure that our young people's needs are catered for. Join us next week.